So here we are, it's Shabbat, a time of rest and renewal, a time to focus on human being instead of human doing, time to take a break and a breath, a time to escape into a day that's different than the rest of the week, a time to focus on faith and family and peace and God. And for so many, that feels impossible right now. Instead, so many are racked with worry and concern. We know around the globe that there are many suffering with physical illness, even fighting for their lives. On the TV, our computers, our smartphones, at the water cooler, and in hallways in our homes, we're hypothesizing and planning and wondering what will be in this pandemic. The store shelves are bare of cleaning supplies and toilet paper as we sit with the not knowing and the fear that creeps into the cracks where normalcy and routine, surety, and comfort once lived. This deep discomfort with the unknown is not unique to us in our time. Maybe those words sound familiar, that you've heard them before. These words were the ones I opened my Ki Tisa Shabbat sermon 1 year ago, as the reality of COVID-19 pandemic was becoming apparent. It was the last service that we held in the building with congregants gathered in unrestricted numbers. This week, as days of the calendar ticked by, we marked the anniversary of the first cases of COVID in our community, the first COVID-19 patients sick in local hospitals, and the anniversary of the looming feelings of fear and worry and concern that our community would share in the same fate of the worldwide community for this pandemic. My sermon continued. In this week's Torah portion, Ki Tisa, we read about the ancient Israelites awaiting Moses' return from Mount Sinai. The text tells us that Moses was gone for a very long time, and that the people gathered against Aaron and pled to him, "Make us a God who will go before us. For that fellow Moses, the leader who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." Aaron directs the people to take off their gold earrings, and he makes them into a molten calf. The people exclaim, "This is your God, O Israel." And early the next day, the people offer up sacrifices and sit down and eat and drink and rejoice. The ancient Israelites commit the great sin of idolatry out of fear and uncertainty. We can imagine what it might have felt like for a people waiting for their leader to return, wanting clear direction, information, and of course, reassurance. We can imagine the feelings of wondering and not knowing and worrying about what will be. And we can imagine people jumping to act, to do something, to create something in the absence of order and normalcy, yearning for comfort and reassurance. While I've not recently heard anything about golden calves being created, saw the store shelves bare of toilet paper, bottled water, and hand sanitizer as people attempted to assuage their fears that they don't have enough to stay healthy or run out of supplies, I share how I did witness somebody stashing bottles of hand sanitizer behind the matzah in the Passover aisle, hoping nobody else would find it so that she could come back and purchase it in a second transaction so as not to violate the limited quantity rule. A year ago, you may remember, the mayor's office asked clergy to remind the community that the city water is safe to drink, stores will be restocking, and that hoarding supplies increases panic. It has been a year of tremendous loss, of pain and suffering and uncertainty, a year when we have learned about viruses and R numbers, vaccines, and the extraordinary effectiveness of wearing masks to protect one another and ourselves. It has been a year of navigating Zoom and doing old things in new ways. A year when our arms have ached of the loneliness that came with the not being able to embrace those we love or gather with friends and neighbors as we were accustomed to. It has been a year of cultivating new skills and activities, making sourdough and gardening and needle crafts. This journey we have been on, one nobody would have chosen, has pushed us and pulled us and beaten us up and left indelible marks. And we have lost so many souls, so many dear ones. It is unfathomable and unbelievable. So many cherished people who were with us just a year ago are now gone, leaving gaping holes where their warmth and love and their talent and companionship once resided. And up until a year ago, we had no idea what was coming. Well, we didn't know how bad it would be anyway. Like a great tsunami of suffering that has washed over us and left us upended in a sea of unknowing and pain and fear. And here we remain still, bobbing in these wavy, storm-tossed waters, perhaps being able to make out the faintest solidity of a shoreline ahead, a beacon whose arrival will come by passing through continued masking, mass vaccination, and one day we hope herd immunity. Yes. All too well, we can imagine the uncertainty of the ancient Israelites, our ancestors, whose leader disappeared for an undisclosed amount of time, and with him any semblance of structure and order of what would be. But you see, the great sin of the golden calf, of idolatry, what Torah tells us is the greatest of all offenses, is the result of prolonged uncertainty and impatience. Yes. We know those feelings, and we learn from our text, from this portion, what not to do when those feelings arise. Do not create something false. Do not just make things up. Do not turn away. Do not abandon what you know works and has gotten you this far in your journey. Instead, stay patient, support one another, care for one another, and have faith. There's an interesting thread on the CCAR Rabbi's Facebook page about this portion, and specifically what might have happened at this point in the Torah had Moses' sister Miriam been left in charge of the ancient Israelites when Moses went to receive the law. One colleague suggested, when Miriam in charge, there would be no golden calf. More jewelry would have made it into the promised land, and nobody would have died. The rabbi goes on to hypothesize that Miriam would have them singing through their anxiety and fears, dancing to get through excess nervous energy, and Aaron leading some sacrifice or something. They would have deputized people to run a listening campaign to explore what everyone was feeling while keeping emotions in check. This colleague adds, we'd probably have entered the land even sooner. But my favorite idea that emerges on this thread is one that suggests, had Miriam and Aaron been charged to shepherd the people together, the calf would have never been built either. Shouldering the great responsibility for the ancient Israelites together, Aaron would have felt less alone and more supported, and in partnership, they would have both been strengthened, and the whole community would be reassured for however long it took, and thereby better able to remain patient. We have affirmed that it is through the best acts of our interconnectedness and partnership and cooperation that we will emerge from this struggle. The scientific collaboration that led to the creation of now distributed new vaccines, the kindness and generosity of giving and volunteerism that has ensured that those who are hungry have food to eat, and the listening ears and compassion and words of encouragement that have reassured us in the anxious and fearful moments. Together, we can strengthen and are strengthened. A year ago, I concluded my sermon by saying that when we are on the other side of this pandemic, I pray the lingering effects of these days will be greater love and connection, cultivated by the compassion and care that we give and receive in these times. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will. Amen.